The Phantom Archives of Edgar the Architect and Schale by Gen Kagami. Volume 17. Shanghai. The Labyrinth of Filtered Flesh and Blood. 1933. Old Millfun. 1. Golden crab roe noodles and the lukewarm wind of the demon city. Hey Edgar, these crab noodles are a gorgeous golden colour, but the scent is so thick it makes me dizzy, heavy like mud, clinging stickily to the tongue. In a back alley off the Bund in Shanghai, dominated solely by the suffocating violent aroma of crab, with no room for any other spices, Schale languidly moved his ivory chopsticks, letting his pearl-coloured hair catch the murky twilight. Inside the white porcelain bowl, the sticky white roe baiyao and viscera of male crabs raised in Suzhou's Yangcheng Lake in November had been thoroughly scraped out and boiled down in hot pork fat. This crab roe chiffon had become a golden swamp, completely suffocating the thin noodles. Naturally, it eliminates all noise such as petty tricks and fills the bowl solely with the bare core of life. It is a crystallization meant to dismantle countless lives and slurp up only the densest vitality. Edgar quietly downed a small cup of 15-year-old Shaoxing wine, discoloured to a dark, blood-like hue by the passage of time. His fingertips, cold and white as porcelain, maintained an arrogant cleanliness, utterly repelling the surrounding clamour and the smell of oil. I hear an incongruous cluster of high-rise apartments lines the shores of Yangcheng Lake, but the thought of this golden mud squirming and growing at the feet of that inorganic concrete is a not unpleasant contrast, quite fitting for this country. Are you solving someone's problem in a way only you can, at a higher dimension of beauty or rationality? This chef solved the problem of extracting only the climax of taste from the crab through thorough dismantling and filtration, a ruthlessly rational method. Having delivered his chilling pronouncement, Edgar brushed up his damp black hair and rose from his seat, his charcoal grey cashmere coat sliced through the air, churned by the shop's rusty electric fan. Schale, too, innocently wiped the golden fat remaining on his lips with a fingertip and followed, letting the hem of his ivory knit flutter. It was undyed cashmere, combed in the extreme cold of Inner Mongolia. Seamless, it was an exquisite membrane that merely draped silently along Schale's fragile skeletal structure, without defying gravity. Stepping out of the shop, the lukewarm wind peculiar to Shanghai, pregnant with the scent of the Huangpu, river's mud, clung stickily to their cheeks while blurring the city's neon lights. The asphalt shone black with mysterious puddles, in which primary-coloured signboards wavered toxically. A disgusting wind. The air is so heavy, it feels like I'll get wet right through my clothes. Schale furrowed his brow at the clinging discomfort and languidly tugged at the collar of his knit. Because the humidity of Shanghai ambiguously rots all contours. However, where we are heading now is a ruthless concrete organ that perfectly borders only the contours of death. Edgar turned up his coat collar against the damp night wind and fixed his gaze on the darkness of the Hongkou district. Beyond the intertwining power lines and old apartment blocks, that alien structure crouched like the carcass of a gargantuan beast. Countless geometrically hollowed-out windows and complexly intersecting aerial corridors. It was once the largest slaughterhouse in the Orient, a perfect labyrinth designed solely to efficiently guide cattle to their deaths without inciting panic. "Hey, what is that?" Rather than a building, it looks like a giant maze of bones. Schale stopped, captivated by its concrete majesty. 1933. Old Millfun. Designed by the British architect Balfours, Edgar stated flatly. It is the same as the crab roe noodles from earlier. The intricately winding cattle paths ere bridges, the rough floors meant to drain blood. All of it is a design, optimized solely to dismantle life and extract the components known as meat. Come, Schale. A visual inspection of the circulation of death is required. 2. Pure white pathology and the mushroom skeleton. The exterior was disarmingly flat, geometric Art Deco concrete. However, the moment Schale passed through the heavy entrance and stepped into the atrium space, sandwiched between the cylindrical central building and the square outer building, he gasped at an overwhelming gravity akin to vertigo. It's completely different from the outside. It's like being suddenly thrown right into the middle of a living creature's internal organs. Schale's pearl-coloured hair swayed in the cold wind blowing through the bottom of the complexly intertwined labyrinth. Supporting the space were countless gargantuan umbrella columns that flared polygonally toward the top. It was a robust mushroom skeleton meant to support the mass of hundreds of cattle, and upon the exposed concrete surface, the marks of the wooden formwork plywood were etched vividly, like wrinkles on skin, concealing the internal madness with a flat epidermis. A magnificent method. Edgar quietly scraped the rough concrete floor with the sole of his smooth leather shoe. But the pathology harboured by modern renovations is far deeper and spreads more hideously. "Open that door, Schale." Where Edgar gestured with his chin, there was a heavy steel door painted an unnaturally bright white, as if embedded in a grey concrete wall, stained with the memory of mud and blood. Whoa, it's so white it's blinding. What lay beyond the cold handle Schale languidly pulled open was an inorganic, perfectly refined, pure white restroom. The latest ceramics, seamless white walls, and a homogeneous light that cast no shadows. The white painted on the thick steel door was a violent prelude, hinting at the morbid cleanroom within. Separated by a single door, the dimension was completely severed from the dim labyrinth of slaughter outside. It is a pathology called a clean room, meant to completely purge the most raw, biological human act of excretion from the context of this blood-stained concrete. Edgar did not even attempt to step into that pure white space, twisting his lips chillingly. They could not bear the mixing of the cattle's memories of death with the stench of their own lives. Therefore, they thoroughly bleached the tragic terroir of the past, with these pure white tiles and ceramics, glossing it over as if it were a safe, cultured space. Those frameless, transparent glass handrails and the beautiful offices are the same. This cleanliness bordering on violence is precisely the true identity of the arrogant deception noise, wherein they avert their eyes from the memories of the past. 3. The spiral to the sun and the cosmic slaughterhouse. Now we go off. We shall trace the circulation of death they walked. The two stepped onto the cattle paths, air bridges that connected the central building and the outer perimeter, crossing complexly like a spider's web. They slowly began to ascend the concrete ramps, their surfaces deeply scored with anti-slip grooves in a spiral motion. It's strange. The higher we climb, the stronger the sunlight shining in from outside becomes. It's very peaceful and beautiful. Schale narrowed his eyes at the afternoon sunlight streaming through the geometric window frames, softly holding the sleeve of his ivory knit up to the light. But Edgar's profile was stiff and cold as a sculpture. To a human, it would be an ascent toward the light. But for the cattle forced to walk here, it was different. As the sunlight grew closer, the air thinned, and the smell of blood thickened. To them, approaching the light was synonymous with approaching absolute death. At those cold words, Schale shuddered. The brighter it becomes, the closer death approaches. Climbing the ramp, fraught with that maddening paradox, the two finally reached the top floor of the central building, the centre of the former slaughter space. What is this place? It's supposed to be a slaughterhouse, but somehow it's like outer space, Schale murmured blankly. Overhead in the vast circular space, a ceiling of orderly metal louver slats, retrofitted during the renovation, was stretched across. The thin strips of light and shadow pouring down from it drew cold geometric patterns on the concrete floor. There was no rawness of blood or flesh anywhere. It was governed solely by a deathly, absolute silence that was inorganic, anti-gravitational, and defied comprehension. A contradiction. The eyes peeking through the gaps in Edgar's black hair gleamed sharply as ice. They abstracted this place, steeped in the scent of blood and flesh, to the extreme with metal and glass, and even went so far as to dress it up as a refined universe. However, the more they gloss it over, the more the concealed memories of the concrete in reaction begin to starve more vividly and violently. The contradiction of the space has surpassed its breaking point. Suddenly, the metal louver ceiling, which had been dead silent like the interior of a spaceship, began to creak with a faint yet grating metallic sound. Schale, it comes. The architecture has begun to dream of us. 4. Transparent fangs and the louver universe. The orderly strips of light and shadow abruptly flashed violently like a maddened metronome, robbing the entire space of its sense of equilibrium. Kya! Schale let out a short scream. The refined, frameless, transparent glass handrails that had bordered the cattle paths and corridors they had climbed up suddenly ran with countless sharp cracks all at once, accompanied by a high-pitched shatter. But the glass did not scatter. The cracked transparent panes, like gargantuan transparent fangs, possessing a will of their own, warped sharply backward and lunged towards Schale as he walked the corridor. "Look out!" Immediately after Edgar strongly pulled Schale's arm toward him, a transparent fang soundlessly grazed the sleeve of Schale's ivory knit, slicing the soft cashmere fibres in a straight line. "Hick," the glasses, like a living creature, Schale murmured in a trembling voice. The soft lighting of the refined offices was swallowed by the flickering shadows of the louvers, completely vanishing. This is not something ambiguous like a grudge or a curse. It is a runaway function, honed to its absolute limit. Edgar chillingly kicked and shattered the approaching transparent fang with his charcoal grey leather shoe. A dry sound like beautiful ice cracking echoed. Snap! But the shards immediately rose again as new fangs. Even after losing the lives targets it was meant to dismantle, This old Millfun simply continued to spin its perfect logic of filtration in a vacuum, and over that, the flimsy glass and metal noise of the modern era, attempting to forcibly gloss them over into a safe and cultured space, placed a lid. Edgar looked up at the flickering louver ceiling. In his cold eyes, those geometric patterns evoking the universe now looked like the blades of a gargantuan meat grinder. Look, the concealed and suppressed cruel purpose logic of the past is rewriting the refined materials of the modern era themselves into murder weapons. In order to regain its original function of dismantling life, it is attempting to carve us progaro masses of life, using the most harmless-looking glass and louvers. Schale, sheltered behind Edgar's back, exhaled a trembling breath. Unrefined grey concrete and refined glass and metal writhing madly. Two conflicting eras were demonstrating a terrifying harmony for the single, maddening purpose of efficiently dismantling life. It's beautiful, but I don't want to be here anymore. I feel like my own body will be carved into parts for this inorganic universe. 5. The heavy bass whistle and the mud of the demon city. The exact moment that countless approaching transparent fangs attempted to lick the edge of Edgar's leather shoe. Boom! A heavy bass sound that seemed to shake the very bottom of the stomach abruptly and violently severed the madness of the perfect dismantling machine. It was the whistle of a gargantuan cargo ship crawling along the Huangpu River, pushing through the muddy water, carrying vast amounts of goods and human desires. That overwhelming vibration of life invaded through the narrow ventilation slits, meant to let the smell of cattle blood escape, causing the metal louvers and transparent glass, which had been putting on airs of a zero-gravity universe, to resonate ungracefully. The vibration of mud and water veins, a mass of reality, far too heavy and raw, slammed into a closed, inorganic logic. Edgar dropped a chilling glance at the trembling glass shards one last time. In that instant, unable to withstand the overwhelming external context, the transparent fangs filling the labyrinth soundlessly returned to their original, frameless handrails, as if the power to a magic lantern had been cut, and the flickering of the louvers also ceased completely. Ha! Ha! Schale gasped heavily, as if collapsing on the spot. The cold logic of dismantling that had tried to invade the depths of his lungs was rapidly peeling away, along with the damp wind of the Huangpu River. This is now merely a gargantuan white elephant monument, having lost its purpose of dismantling life, yet continuing to eternally gloss over its form alone. It is a pitiful skeleton of concrete. The two descended the cattle path, which had regained its silence once more, and exited the heavy entrance into the Shanghai night. The moment they stepped outside, the lukewarm wind of the demon city mingled with mud and exhaust fumes violently slapped their cheeks. From the direction of the Huangpu River, that heavy bass sound still echoed faintly, and the surrounding alleys overflowed with clamour, as if that deathly universe, purified and glossed over to the extreme just moments ago, had been a lie. This was a sinkhole of overwhelming life, where countless lives writhed chaotically together. Somehow I suddenly feel nostalgic for that golden crab mud from earlier. Schale languidly brushed away the pearl-coloured hair, sticking to his nape with fingertips that were still trembling slightly. A bloodless, glasswork-like whiteness remained on his cheeks. The skin peeking from the torn sleeve of his knit looked terribly cold. That, too, is the violence of dismantling and extraction. However, at least over there, the vulgar human desire noise to taste remains. It is far healthier than the universe of a clean room. Edgar, without looking back at the 1933 old Millfun crouching like the carcass of a gargantuan beast, began to walk toward the sea of neon lights with an unwavering stride. There is nothing more terrifying and more hideous than a perfect function whose purpose has been concealed. Let us go, Schale. There is no need to linger. Schale looked back at that gargantuan concrete labyrinth just one last time, gave a small shudder as if enduring something, and then followed Edgar's back. Avoiding the puddles where primary-coloured signboards wavered toxically, the two melted into the chaotic Shanghai night. End of Volume 17.